All right. I'm Lily. I'm the engagement coordinator for FathomVerse, and today we are very excited to announce that new images have been added to FathomVerse, contributed by Dr. Don Wright's expedition to Challenger Deep. The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point of the seabed of Earth, and it's located in the Western Pacific Ocean at the southern end of the Mariana Trench. Thanks to Dawn's contribution, you can now interact with imagery from Challenger Deep by playing FathomVerse. Today, we're going to chat with Dawn to learn more about her work mapping the ocean floor and her experience diving to the bottom of the ocean. Dr. Dawn Wright is the chief scientist of Esri and is a specialist in marine geology, geography, and oceanography. To many, she's known as at Deep Sea Dawn, a nickname earned after completing numerous trips to the bottom of the ocean. Dawn made history in 2022 when she became the first Black person to visit Challenger Deep in a submersible. You can read the story of her historic journey in her book, Mapping the Deep. Dawn is an advocate of GIS. Oh, there it is. Conservation and inclusivity, and she is a mentor and hero to many aspiring scientists. Thank you so much for being here, Dawn.
I'm
In a moment,
delighted. Sorry.
In a moment, I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Kakani Katija. Kakani is the lead of FathomVerse and is a principal engineer at MBARI, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. Kakani and her lab investigate the ways that imaging and broad community engagement can enable observations of life in the ocean. Later on, Dawn will answer some questions from the audience. So while Kakani and Dawn are talking, please drop the questions in the chat. Take it away, Kakani. And feel free to let us know if you all can hear us in the chat and start sharing your questions.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the intro, Lily. And thank you, Dawn, for joining us. And we're very, very excited for this opportunity to chat. And of course, celebrate the fact that you were so generous in sharing your data from Challenger Deep with FathomVerse and FathomVerse players. So thank you so much for doing that. And I know from the Discord server and stuff, a lot of people are really excited to see some of that imagery.
Thank you. I have admired FathomNet and FathomVerse from afar for so long, and I'm just thrilled to be here, and I'm so glad that this worked out to
Yeah,
have some of the imagery included.
yeah, and we'll definitely dive, pun intended, into that a little bit later. And I thought it would be worth me maybe saying a couple words about what FathomVerse is for those people that are tuning in and have no clue what we're talking about. FathomVerse is a mobile app, a game where we invite anyone, anywhere to download and play along with us as we work together to discover all life in the ocean. And as part of that process, researchers from all over the world, including Dawn, contributes their data so that we as players can look at it and celebrate some of the really interesting animals and life that we come across. And so, the contribution that you've made, Dawn, is the only data that we have so far from the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean. And I think it's just going to be really exciting for everyone to be able to see some of that imagery and what we'll learn from it as well.
Oh,
So,
that's awesome. And I must give all thanks and gratitude and credit to Victor Vescovo and his Caladan Oceanic team because he made that dive possible. His team made the expedition possible along with IOS Expeditions.
mhm,
The ship and the submersible are now with a different organization called Inkfish Expeditions
mhm.
and working under the aegis of the University of Western Australia. So the ship and the submersible have a new name, and I understand they are both in dry dock right now. But
Oh,
in 2022, that was all Caladan Oceanic and Victor's generosity and reaching out to me and to Esri to be involved in that. So it's all due to him.
yeah. And I can't wait to talk about that as well, because I have so many questions about that experience. But before we get started, I thought it would be great for us to learn a little bit more about you, but to do it through your Instagram, which I followed you on. I've been following you for many, many, many years, and I had some fun over the weekend combing through some of the imagery that you've shared there. And I would love to get some more insight from you around some of the images that you've shared, and as a way for us to get to know the real Dawn, besides your most recent dives to Mariana Trench. So I wanted to start with this one. What can you tell me about this image?
Oh my goodness, this goes a long way back because uh, I was born in 1961, so let's get that out of the way. And my parents and I moved to Hawaii when I was around this time. I think it says here I'm 6 years old in this picture. My family had just moved from Honolulu, Hawaii, to Maui, Hawaii, and my mother especially fell in love with Lahaina. And so she was always taking me to Lahaina, especially on Sundays after church. And so this is a very rare picture of me in a dress and in shoes and socks in Hawaii. But I loved going to Lahaina on Sundays with my mom, and we would have a hot fudge sundae together, but we would explore the port and the town of Lahaina, and we would learn about Hawaiian history. So much history in Lahaina. I think people have learned more about Lahaina, unfortunately, due to the horrific fires that took place there. But it's really one of the foundational places in the islands in terms of history and the whaling ships. So I'm standing in front of one of the old whaling vessels there, and I just fell in love with ocean history as well as Hawaiian history, and it was just really a formative time for me. And it would be 2 years later, since this is marking age 6. At
Mhm.
age 8, I made the decision to become an oceanographer and to
Wow.
pursue that. I didn't know how in the world you did it, but I made that little pact with my little self that I was going to become an oceanographer. So that all happened there on Maui.
That's incredible, Dawn. I didn't know that. 8 years old. I wish I
Yeah.
could say I knew what I wanted to do when I grew up at 8 years old. That's incredible. And then, a little background, both Dawn and I have Hawaiian roots, or we've both of our families have lived on Hawaii. So it's really neat to see this connection
Yeah.
right here. Let's see if I can do another one. Oh, this one. I love this photo for so many reasons. I think there's so much to uncover about you and your personality. I mean, I know that you're really into cycling and stuff like that, but any other stuff you want to share about this photo in particular?
My goodness, thank you for picking out these pictures. Yes, I really do enjoy cycling, both road biking and mountain biking. I used to compete as a road cyclist when I was in graduate school, and a colleague of mine at Esri came to one of our virtual meetings wearing this shirt. I think you could get this shirt from the ACLU. And the friend who was wearing the shirt is also an avid cyclist as well as a runner. And I said, Keith, where did you get this shirt? And he told me. So, so I have the shirt, and I think this was it looks like a Martin Luther King Day picture, a day of service and renewal. So I thought I would take a picture wearing this shirt. I was also still thinking a lot about the death of George Floyd. And in 2022, we were all coming out of the pandemic, and we were just trying to find our way. And the specter of racism is with us still, uh, probably now more than ever, given current things happening in our country. So it was just I thought it was important to post this picture. And the cap though is it comes from Phil Guyman's Cookie Fondo. If there are any avid cyclists out there who follow professional cycling and follow U.S. domestic cycling, you know who Phil Guyman is, and he's one of the most amazing people, I think, in the cycling community, and he's become more famous in retirement than I think he was when he was riding in the Tour de France. But he puts on this epic fondo or group ride every year in Malibu. And the reason I wanted to do it is because not only did I know about him, but he has a thing about chocolate chip cookies. He loves chocolate chip cookies,
Who
and I
doesn't?
am I'm crazy about chocolate chip cookies too. And when I found out that he ran a cookie fondo, I said, I am in. I'm going to try this. The ride was really hard, but the best chocolate chip cookies are served on the course at the rest stops and then afterwards, along with some amazing food from many of the local restaurants in the Malibu, Southern California area. So,
Oh, love that. You can race and enjoy some of the
yeah.
most amazing chocolate chip cookies. I wanted to add to, Dawn is incredibly generous with her time and what she does for the broader oceanography community, but you are also very well known for your inclusivity and advocacy for, underrepresented groups within ocean sciences. And so I thought it was really important to highlight that you talk the talk, but you also walk the walk. And I think we're all really grateful for that contribution.
Thank
Um,
you, Kakani, as do you. So I'm just so honored to be on this program with you, and we get to talk about this. Awesome.
it's fun, as well as this photo. I think we're all dog lovers here, but I thought it
Yeah.
would be good for you to introduce Riley.
So this is my dog Riley. Soon after she arrived with me, she is 7 years old now. Boy, this is a recent posting then, and I wish I could show you Riley now, but she is asleep and she has herself wrapped around my chair, so I cannot move. But this is a picture of her soon after I brought her home. I adopted her at, oh gosh, what was it? 8 weeks. So she's around 8 weeks old in this photo. And she's a golden retriever. She is just a wonderful treasure to have. I'm a dog mom. I'm not married. I'm not in a relationship. I'm too busy, but I am a dog mom, and I've always had a dog in my life. And Riley is the most recent dog in my life, and she's named Riley after Stephen Curry's firstborn. I'm a big basketball fan as well, especially of the Golden State Warriors and particularly of Steph Curry,
Yeah,
number 33. And Steph Curry's oldest daughter is named Riley. And when Riley first showed up on the scene as a little 2 or 3 year old, he would bring her with him to his press conferences or his interviews, and she just took over. She's just so much fun and
yeah.
so much joy and so funny and such a wonderful little girl that my mom and I decided to name this little puppy Riley. So that's where her
Oh,
name comes from.
I love that story. I do remember those interviews, and such a shame Steph Curry hurting his hamstring, and
Yes.
the
Yeah.
Warriors are now out. We were watching the whole
Yeah.
series. But yes, Riley is a sweetie. I got to meet him recently when I stopped by Don, and he's so wonderful. I love dogs. And I actually have two photos from Mariana Trench because I mean I know you've been on so many expeditions. Um, there's a lot of emotion coming through in this photo, and so I'd love to hear from you. Like, what were you feeling? What was happening that day or that moment?
Yeah. Well, that is me with Victor Vescovo, who is just the most one of the most amazing people on this planet. He's an iconic explorer, I think the iconic explorer of our time right now, because he has done so much. He has ascended all of the highest peaks on this planet. He has, I think, skied across the North Pole. He He has been to space. This picture was taken in July of 2022, but in June of 2022, he ascended into space on the Blue Origin New Shepard mission.
Yeah.
His day job is as a private equity investor. I think he owns and runs three companies, but he has a passion, of course, for the ocean, also for maps. And if you have not read the story or looked into the story of the five deeps, that is just a tremendous expedition. The five deeps was his quest to descend to the five deepest places in the world ocean, not just Challenger Deep, but the deepest place in the Arctic, in the Indian, the Southern Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. And he did that, financed it all by purchasing an old naval slash NOAA vessel and outfitting it for such an expedition, seeing to the design and the building of the limiting factor, which was built by Triton submersibles. In fact, Triton submarines. I was on a prior podcast and I was with Susan Casey, who is the author of The Underworld, a fantastic book. All of her books are fantastic, but The Underworld is her most recent, and she describes Triton submarines as the Apple computers of the submarine industry, which I think is
Mhm.
very apt,
Mhm.
especially given the Titan tragedy. At any rate, Victor, he's like a Jeff Bezos or a Richard Branson. He has poured his personal wealth into this the ship and the submersible, the crew, and after he successfully completed the five deeps, he continued to make additional descents and do additional dives while he was waiting for a buyer to take the ship and the submersible and everything off of his hands so he could move on to the next amazing thing.
Mhm.
And so I was one of the very fortunate people that he invited to descend to Challenger Deep. And we are looking happy there in that picture, of course, because it's just an amazing thing to be in a situation like that. But it took us 4 hours to descend to Challenger Deep. So we got to know each other very well and we became friends. So I am so proud and happy to call Victor Vescovo not only a scientific colleague, but a friend. And
Mhm.
he also adores Riley. He's always asking
Oh.
me about Riley, wanting pictures of Riley. He's got two dogs. He's got two dogs of his own, but he really adores Riley.
Oh.
We may have been talking about Riley, but more often than not, we were talking about what we were going to be doing on that particular dive because it wasn't just a descent to set a record; it was a descent to test a prototype side scan sonar device
Yeah.
at full ocean depth.
Yeah. I mean, a pivotal moment in ocean exploration history, I'm sure. And then another one related to the same expedition. I actually love this photo because I two things about you, Dawn. Like there is just you're always full of so much gratitude. And then the other thing is like celebrating a success, but also recognizing that it's not just us or not just one person. Anything else you want to add about this photo?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, this photo was taken with a drone.
Mm.
So in terms of the fantastic view, the drone operator was terrific, and he flew the drone out in front of us. We had finished all of our dives, and we were heading into Palau, heading into one of the best port calls I've ever had. And the people at the very front there, very special people, because on this particular expedition, it wasn't just my dive, the Challenger deep dive, but we also went to the Yap Trench and the Palau Trench. So Victor wanted to make those dives. The Yap and the Palau trenches are way, way, way under visited, under map. Hopefully we can get you some FathomVerse footage from those dives. I'm at the front there with a red cap on, but to the right is Tommy Remengesau, the former president of the Republic of Palau.
Mm,
Such an awesome person. And he dove to the Palau Trench with Victor.
mhm.
Next to him is Nicole Yamase, who is from the Federated States of Micronesia, which is where Challenger Deep sits. At the time, she was a University of Hawaii biology PhD student. She's since gotten her PhD, and she works for a coral reef nonprofit now. But Victor took her to Challenger Deep, uh, I think it was the year before, as the first Pacific Islander. So awesome that this is Asian Pacific Islander Month or Asian Pacific Native Hawaiian Islander Month this month. And she was on the expedition to support Cesario Sawalyer, who is the diver who went to the Yap Trench. Cesario is a master navigator, I would say on par with Nainoa Thompson of the
Mm.
Polynesian Voyaging Society. Cesario's father is Papa Mao,
Oh,
who
okay.
taught Nainoa just about everything he knows. So that was just such an honor to be in his presence,
Yeah.
let alone to get to go to sea with him. And
Yeah. I
the
mean, and
other,
what a moment too. Like you're just surrounded by all of these
oh my goodness, yeah.
individuals, and it's all captured in, a lovely photo of that moment.
Yeah,
Um,
and that was the happiest ship I'd ever been on. Also, the food
um,
was wonderful.
of
That's
course,
why I was so
of course
happy.
it was. It was in South Asia.
Yeah.
How about this one? So I was really curious because I know anyone who follows you knows that you're really into Legos. And here was, I think, a big celebration. Anything you wanted to share?
Yes, well, I had this dream, and Victor is a Lego fan as well. He's really into Legos. Learned a lot about our common ground. After doing the Challenger deep dive, I had this dream about doing a Lego stop motion movie about a certain part of the dive. Or to do a Lego stop motion movie is a lot of work. It actually ended up being a 3 to 4 month effort to do a 5 minute video. But luckily, I found a fantastic colleague at Esri, Marika Vertsones, who is a product engineer working for Esri Australia. And I put out a call to the Lego channel on the Esri internal discussion board because we have a Lego channel where we talk about our Lego builds. And I asked if anyone would be willing to take on this project, and Marika was. She she did a brilliant job of creating a Lego version of the limiting factors. So that's what I'm holding there because I'm about to package that up and send it to Victor because we had finished creating the movie and we wanted Victor to have the Lego limiting factor. I have the other part of the movie here, which I'm trying to gather for those of you who can see. There's a part of the movie where we show the interior of the limiting
Cool.
factor with me and Victor there inside. So that's part of the movie. So I kept that part, but Victor has the mock, my own creation of the limiting factor. And you can see that movie at mappingthedeep.com.
Okay, we'll try to add those links in the chat. I think this might be my last photo, and I have questions, Dawn.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have a huge crush on Jason Momoa. Let's get that out of the way.
Same. I will tell you, I've had one celebrity crush my entire life, and that one celebrity crush was on Jason Momoa. So the fact that
Oh,
you had this, I just had to ask the reason for that.
oh, yeah. Well, I've had two, Denzel Washington, and now it's Jason.
Um,
Anyway, this is part of a tribute video. Jason Momoa was the Ocean Hero awardee at the Peter Benchley Awards, the
okay.
Peter Benchley Ocean Awards that took place earlier this month in Baltimore. And so with the unfortunately he was not there to accept the award.
Darn it, Don.
Too bad, but he has this amazing water bottling company in Hawaii. If you have a business or a conference or any situation where you want to get fresh, clean water out to a number of people, you can hire his, I think it's called Mananalu. You can hire his company and they will provide water in these bottles that you can return, recycle. And
Mhm.
it's a great way to get away from plastic and to be more sustainable with water. It's the best water I've ever tasted, actually.
Oh,
So that's one
wow.
of the reasons why he got the Ocean Hero Award because he does so many things like that. And he's a spokesman for the ocean. I know he does voiceovers for so many organizations, including the UN. And this is that they had pictures from his prior roles, and so I snapped that one as I was sitting in the front row.
I
And this
love
was at
it.
the National Aquarium.
I love it. I know one of the things we've been thinking about too is like with FathomVerse, if there's a way to connect with Jason Momoa to help share, the
Yeah.
project, the mission, that would be fantastic. So anyway, I loved that last photo and I was like, I have to ask Dawn about
Yeah.
this.
Well, I wish I had Jason's email for you or his mobile, but I do have the contacts from the Boomerang Water, I think is the company that he works with.
Okay.
And there were two gentlemen from Boomerang Water who accepted the award on his behalf.
Oh,
And I
great.
think I have their email addresses, so I can give that to you.
I know you've hooked me up with other contact info in the past, so maybe at some point. But I do want to jump into some like questions that's really specific. I mean, thank you for doing that. I feel like our audience has a better sense of who the real Dawn Wright is. And I wanted to just jump into a few questions we had around, those dives, at least some of your professional interests, and then, of course, what can players be expected to see when they start looking at the data that you contributed? I would say the first one, and you've probably been asked this multiple times, but I think it's really helpful to understand like what drives you professionally, and that's around mapping the seafloor. I know you're involved with, the seafloor or seabed 2030, and really, why is mapping the ocean really important?
Well, mapping the ocean is really one of the most foundational things that we can do in terms of understanding life in the ocean, in terms of understanding how we can be safe from the ocean. I use that example because I spent quite a bit of time at Oregon State University in Corvallis and learned all about the tsunami awareness exercises and activities there off the Oregon coast because Oregon and Washington have that Cascadia subduction zone. So if there's a mega earthquake that occurs, that could occur, and I think there's still a 33% chance in the next 50 years, I think is the number that could occur.
Mhm.
And so that would send tsunami waves hurtling toward the Oregon coast with about a 15-minute warning. I'm sure these numbers can be double checked, and this is just what's off the top of my head. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because when these tsunami waves or even a storm surge comes to shore, when those waves feel the bottom and then break and start to move inland, it's the bathymetry, it's mapping the seabed or mapping the seafloor that helps us to understand where those waves are going to end up, what direction they're going to go in. So it's a total public safety issue. There's also an issue that we don't really talk about enough, which is our whole 95% of our data traffic, internet traffic. The reason why your podcast or this event is able to go out on so many channels, submarine cables. So we need to map the seafloor to understand where to put new cables to be able to get to places where we're going to maintain these cables. Mapping the seabed is also such a critical part of marine protection and all of the habitats. I just came back from the GeoHab conference in Key West, Florida, geological and biological habitat mapping. And so that is one of the conferences to go to understand that world of mapping the seafloor, not only for geology, but in terms of the ecology, what lives on the seafloor and why, and how do we protect that? How do we use that properly?
Mhm.
There's so many other reasons, but these are the big ones that come to mind. I'll say one more in terms of shipping and transportation
Mhm.
and ports. The seabed is as important to us in terms of knowing its structure and its morphology and its activity, I would say, as our internet highway system in terms of transportation of goods and services.
Mhm.
So, and it's just cool. It's just the most amazing as you know, the Monterey Bay Canyon, one of the most iconic bathymetry in the world. I see that map of the Monterey Canyon. I know exactly what that is, and where
Mhm.
and why it's so amazing and so beautiful and so important.
Yeah, and it's worth also mentioning, right? Like the seabed changes,
Yes,
right? And so being
yes,
able to
totally
map
dynamic.
at those changes is incredibly important for all of those activities that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, so now related to mapping, so I understand from your interviews and also talking from you or with you that the primary goal for you going on the Challenger Deep was to map that seafloor area, right? And I think what's really fascinating, and I think what the players are going to see, is that in the videos that you shared with us, there's a lot of stuff besides, just a barren seafloor, right? There's a lot of plants, or so there's some animals. I think my question for you is like, what surprised you the most about the ocean life that you observed on that dive,
Oh, well, the fact that that there
if
was
anything?
ocean life.
Yeah.
I knew that there was going to be some, but to actually see it at that extreme depth, at full ocean depth. So I saw with my own eyes that there is life in the ocean literally from top to bottom. So there aren't these places that are deserts, so to speak, in terms of there's no life there, there's no ecology there. This is why the various activities that have been proposed for even the abyssal plains of the ocean are problematic if we don't know, if we don't have an accounting of the life that's there. And I was fascinated by the little amphipods. A little amphipod went right past our window, and Victor and I looked at it and we guessed it was probably Erythrines plasticus. So Erythrines plasticus is the species of amphipod that was discovered and named by Alan Jameson, the University of Western Australia, and he and his students and postdocs, they've done the autopsies of the creature, and they found human-made plastic already entrained in the tissues of the creature. So it's the first uh, species to be so named because of something horrific that we are doing to our oceans. So I was pretty impressed to see that little celebrity go past our go past our window.
Yeah. It's funny, looking out must have been amazing. I've never been a submersible, so I'm just gonna live
Right?
vicariously through you. I know we'll fix that hopefully someday.
Yeah. My goodness.
And then here's another question because I've read in some of your interviews that one of the first things you saw when you reached the bottom was a glass bottle. Besides these animals. I mean, what was your reaction to that, right? You're in the deepest part of the ocean and you see, human effects, human
Oh
impact.
my gosh, yeah. And this is the subject of the Lego stop motion movie. That the 5 minutes depicts that first part of our, it was the very first part. It was the very first thing that we saw when we got to the bottom. And Victor and I were both so disgusted and
Mm.
so disappointed. And when I reported on it via social media from the ship, that was the finding that went viral. It sort of, despite the animal life that we saw and for me, the evidence of tectonic erosion, the vast fields of angular blocks being scraped off the Pacific plate as it was subducted, that made me excited. It was the beer bottle. The beer bottle. And even just 2 days ago, there's an article about the beer bottle that appeared on some internet blog.
Oh,
People
wow.
are still talking about it, but I think it's been effective from the standpoint of there literally is no part of this planet that we are affecting in a bad way. And there have been some smarty pantses on the internet who have said, well, it came from their ship. Somebody from their ship dropped the bottle overboard. No way.
Hmm.
No way. We followed strict protocol, international rules in terms of not throwing anything overboard, certainly not plastic, but no bottles.
Right.
And it's sort of like backpacking into the Grand Canyon or into a national park. You pack out everything that you bring in.
Leave no
That's
trace.
the
Yeah.
practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody trashed the ocean and it uh, preceded us in getting to Challenger Deep.
Yeah. It's always kind of mind-blowing about that. And,
Yeah.
on these research or scientific expeditions, we always do our best to leave no trace. We make a
Yeah.
lot of decisions around what we're doing. Is it worth it? What's the impact? And so then to see this just there, must have been
Yeah.
really frustrating and aggravating.
With the label intact. So half the questions we got was, well, what kind of a bottle was it? Was it a Heineken? Was it a Beck's?
Yeah. What
We
was
could
it? Can you tell
we,
me?
we could not tell. And we didn't want to tell lest we get into trouble with those companies.
Okay.
The most important thing though was that it was a bottle and it was somebody's trash and
Yeah.
it just shouldn't have been there.
You can whisper at me it to me at some point. I won't tell anyone.
I'm not a beer drinker, so I have no idea.
No idea. All right. Well, I also wanted to say, like, we had opened up. So, as part of the FathomVerse community, we have a Discord server, and players join the Discord and share imagery, talk to each other, ask questions about different animals. And we actually posed a couple questions to them earlier or last week if they had anything specific that they wanted to ask you. And so I have some questions there. And then after I go over these, we're also going to open it up to the viewers of this live stream. So please put your questions in the chat. But first, and this is kind of going back to the history of mapping that you've been involved in. What are some interesting things that you've learned about the geologic history of the planet through your mapping work? Was there a connection that you saw or made that was really exciting for you personally or professionally?
Oh, yes. So I've been involved for most of my career in mapping places where seafloor is being created. So mapping
Mm.
the seafloor spreading centers where new crust is created, and you can do residual mapping, or you can map residuals as you go back to some of these places and see uh, slight changes in the bathymetry from the actual eruptions taking place in those zones, which is very hard to do geologically in most places because geologic processes are normally very, very slow. And it's hard to, unless you are in a very active area,
Mhm.
it's hard to see some of these changes in your lifetime or over
Right.
the course of a year or so. So that has been very, very exciting to map those areas, but also to map the other end member, the other part of the tectonic process, the recycling of the crust of our planet, where you have seafloor created at seafloor spreading centers like the East Pacific Rise
Hmm.
or the Juan de Fuca Ridge, which is about to possibly erupt,
Right.
where we're
Like,
all
wasn't
looking at
there
axial.
something? Yeah, wasn't there something 2 weeks ago? There was
And there
an
was something
eruption.
2 weeks ago in my study area, my doctoral study area on the East
Right.
Pacific Rise. And the scientists there actually witnessed a volcanic eruption in progress at a seafloor
Incredible.
spreading center. from the Alvin submersible. First
Right.
time ever.
And my understanding was because it was an active area, they had to actually pull Alvin.
Yes.
And so a lot of observations weren't able to be made because of that challenge, right?
Yeah, for
Um,
safety.
for
Yeah.
safety. It's like science in action. I love it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you could see the yellow flashes as the eruption was taking place. Unbelievable.
Hmm.
I've also had the opportunity to map subduction zones. So the earliest work that I did in mapping was looking at the Tonga Trench, all the way on the other south of Challenger Deep. And the Tonga Trench includes the second deepest place on the planet. So Challenger Deep is the deepest, Horizon Deep is the second deepest, only by a few meters in the Tonga Trench. And that's a completely different scenario where uh, a plate is dying. It's not being born, it's dying. And uh, both of these end members, especially in the Pacific Ocean, are fairly fast geologically,
Hmm.
fast spreading, and very fast and steep subduction because the plate is so old and cold and heavy
Hmm.
that it just sinks vertically into the trench. And so the bathymetry there is very dramatic, very exciting. And so getting to map the Tonga Trench and now recently being involved with the Mariana Trench has been really, really cool.
Yeah. Great. Here's another one from Discord. What are some of your favorite animals from the Hadal Zone? I know on the YouTube, people have been asking, did you see any hagfish or did you see any giant isopods? I mean, what are your favorites? Because sometimes that the answer can be a little surprising.
Yeah, well, we are so deep that
Hmm.
some of these species cannot exist at these depths.
Mm.
10,900, our dive went to a maximum depth of 10,919 meters.
Hmm.
So the first thing, it's not my favorite, but they are so strange, are these hydroids. They're like little worms that came out of they were just stuck on the angular boulders that we saw in the trench. And they were clearly feeding on the hydrothermal fluids coming out of those boulder piles. So
Hmm.
if anyone is able to identify these hydroids is our first guess. And this came from Dr. Paige Maroney, who was on our expedition as the chief scientist of the lander, the
Hmm.
robots that went with us. The robots accompanied the submersible to help us with navigation and then also to take critical videography and photography. So some of your data come from the lander rather than the submersible.
Hmm.
So that's one thing. But I really liked the uh, the the amphipods, but also the decapods. I think the genus and species are Benthicissimus crenatus, and they are blood red, bright red, orangey
Mm. Right.
prawns.
Really obvious.
Those
Yeah.
guys are really cool, and their antennae are just super long, way longer than the length of their bodies.
Hmm.
And the way that they glide and swim through the water, I really like them. And they are more prominent at around 7 to 8,000 meters.
Yeah.
So they're super deep, but we didn't see any of them in the 10,900 meter range because the deeper you go, the I guess the structure or the complexity of these creatures narrows down into these smaller invertebrates or these very, very tiny
Hmm.
crustaceans. So there's no Meg in the Challenger Deep. There's no giant, there are no sharks, there's no
Unfortunately.
none of those big creatures. They are not there. They can't take the pressure.
Yeah. Have you watched the Meg?
No, I refuse to watch the Meg.
I haven't watched it either. We should probably watch it together.
Yeah, we can we can make fun of it.
We could have like a live, yeah, like our live feedback on the Meg. Love that. And then actually you mentioned a little bit about the lander. I think it's worth perhaps diving a little bit more into the data that you shared with us, because it wasn't just the data that was, like collected from the actual submersible itself. It
Mhm.
included other contributions. Do you mind kind of explaining or providing more detail about that?
Yes, well, and this is in contrast to the Titan dive.
Mm,
I always go back to that now because people think about the Titan submersible disaster and think that that was normal, the way that they conducted that operation. No, absolutely not. And so those of us from Mbari and Scripps and Woods Hole and all of the great oceanographic places, we can say unequivocally that what everything, just about everything they did was wrong. But with the limiting factor as a submersible is always accompanied by a lander, which is an instrument cage.
mhm,
And I guess so called because it lands ahead of the place where the submersible is supposed to be. There are usually two landers that are in close proximity to where the submersible is supposed to go to help the submersible to navigate. The way that we navigated on the bottom was to ping off of the lander. So the
mm,
lander goes first. The ship surveys in the coordinates of the lander so that we're very sure exactly where the instrument package is, where the cage is, where the
mhm,
lander is, and knowing that position, then we can navigate off of that position. Victor dead reckoned from the lander position, and then well, he we also had a little bit of trouble on our dive too because we never saw our lander. Well, first of all, we only had one lander because the other lander was not working. So we had to only dive with one, and we never saw that lander because it got blown off course by bottom currents.
oh,
It
yeah.
was about 600 meters or so off course, so we never saw it, but we could ping off of it.
Mhm,
So Victor was able to get our position, our initial position from there, and then dead reckon to the other position. We did have a second lander that we purposely landed on the upper slopes of the trench,
mhm,
and it sat at around 7,396 meters, so it could take additional videography and photography of these species that we were not going to be able to see in the trench.
mhm, mhm,
So these landers are awesome. They are robots. They're autonomous. They go down to the bottom by themselves. They are triggered to come back up by themselves. They have conductivity, temperature, and depth sensors. They have little sampling devices or cages to capture creatures. They have videography, photography. They can have other instrument packages placed on them, but those were the main things that our landers had.
yeah.
And Dr. Paige Maroney was in charge of that whole science program on our expedition. Paige is fantastic. She was one of the most wonderful people to go to sea with, and she's also a deep ocean early career researcher as part of the deep ocean observing strategy. So she will be speaking next week at the Deep Ocean Observing Strategy annual meeting if people are interested in
Right,
registering and uh, listening in on that.
right. And then so it's worth mentioning, right, that there's imagery that were collected using the landers and also
Mhm.
the submersible itself, and you can find that in FathomVerse now, which is I think
Mhm.
really exciting. And then I have, I think, one more question from the Discord, and I've been kind of weaving some of the YouTube questions as well. And you kind of alluded to this before, the fact that you can find life almost anywhere you look in the ocean. But I think people are really curious about that experience of, descending in the submersible, right? Especially that dive that you did to the Mariana Trench, and like, were you looking out during the entire dive? Like, did you notice biomass shifts or changes? Was it gradual? Did it sharply decrease? What do you remember about that experience? I've read some books, as well as come across some notes from, William Beebe and their dives, and they talk about this inky blackness, and I'm really curious what that was like for you.
Yeah, it was the same. It Well, first of all, you notice the changes in light more
Mm,
so than changes in biomass because biomass is more of a regional, horizontal understanding of the ocean. And we were doing this one point source vertical descent.
mhm,
So our descent is sort of like if you're in a football stadium and you fly a drone in a football stadium and you lower a camera or a flashlight, let's call it a flashlight into a completely dark
mhm,
football stadium, and then you get questions about what is the stadium as a whole
mhm,
like? What were the different levels of seating that you saw? Where was the jumbotron? What did the lines on the field look like? And you can't really answer that question from just lowering a flashlight into a dark stadium.
yeah.
You only know really what is around you until you get to the bottom of the stadium with your little flashlight. And that's the way that the submersible dive is. You
Mhm.
are just a little point in space, descending vertically. And what I love though about submersible diving is that once you're at the surface, I mean, when you're at the surface and you're diving, you go through the most beautiful blue as you go through the euphotic zone, that light zone where you can see everything, and then things start to get very gray and
Mhm.
then pitch black, and it is inky black. There is no light
Mm,
at all, and yet it's comforting. I found it to be very comforting,
mm,
very, very lovely, especially when the bioluminescent show starts, the fireworks show starts. And in most of my submersible dives, there's been some bioluminescence either from jellyfish or siphonophores, mostly from those two creatures, especially with the siphonophores as they crash into each other.
yeah.
And then there's the spray of bioluminescence. And the neat thing about the dive that I had with Victor is that he spotted some bioluminescent jellyfish. I think we were around 900, between 900 and 1,000 meters deep. So we were in the twilight zone. And
Mhm.
he started to flash the submersible lights at the jellyfish and he got response.
Yeah.
Flashed back.
Like a lot of the stuff that Edie Widder has done and
Yes,
other
yeah,
groups.
yeah. Edie's work is absolutely amazing. But for most of our descent, it was just blackness. There was no, we didn't see anything.
Yeah. So
Uh,
you didn't have lights on while you were descending then if you were
no, no, because
watching
we were saving
bioluminescence.
battery power
Yeah.
so that we could use as much of our battery power as possible once we got on the bottom, because we had to, of course, operate the lights and the cameras, but also the side scan sonar instrument
Yeah.
that we were testing.
Yeah, that's quite a payload. But by descending in the dark, you could then be able to see all of that bioluminescence, which is so
Yes,
incredible.
and I loved it. It was the inkiness has its own beauty, and uh, its own, again, I use the word comfort because I knew that I was in a completely safe
Mhm.
vehicle. I didn't have to worry about that. I could just enjoy the ride. And it's very quiet and very calm. You know, it's just a calm elevator ride. It's not like going into space where you've got all of the
Giant rocket.
disruptions, yeah, and you're going through G forces.
Hmm.
There's no change in the pressure that you feel because you're completely protected by the titanium sphere that you're sitting inside of.
Hmm.
It's just a wonderful experience. And Oftentimes submersible pilots will play music,
Mhm.
beautiful ethereal music, or in the case of Victor and I, we talked. We just had a good time talking on the way down. And then on the way back up, we watched a movie.
What movie did you watch?
We watched, and he let me pick. I chose Star Wars Episode One, The Phantom Menace, because there is that scene in The Phantom Menace where they have the Gungans and the Gungan subs
Yeah,
underwater. There's the underwater city that Jar Jar Binks is from.
that's right.
Regardless of what you feel about Jar Jar Binks, is
That was quite the movie.
yeah, that they did a beautiful job, I thought, of depicting that in The Phantom Menace. So we watched that. We were still not back up to the surface, so Victor wanted to watch some of the Steve Zissou movie because
Okay.
he sees himself as a Steve
I
Zissou.
can see that. I can
Yeah.
see that. It's funny because you mentioned Star Wars. There was another image on your Instagram that you shared recently about which one was actually your favorite Star Wars movie.
Ah, yes.
Here
Yes.
to share.
Rogue One.
You
Uh,
know, it's funny. I agree with you.
Good.
Yeah. No, I thought
Yeah,
it
but
was excellent.
yeah, well, we could do a whole nother podcast about that
No.
topic, but I loved Rogue One because it's very deep.
Mm,
And I think it's been just Rogue One and Andor, the series that's on Disney Plus right now that leads you up to the events in Rogue One.
mhm.
That's been named or referred to as Star Wars for adults.
Yeah, so more
Uh,
of the intrigue, more
yeah,
what.
very deep themes in there and themes that relate, I think, very closely to what's happening in the world right now.
Yeah.
But I also like the fact that Rogue One is the story tells you the origin story of how well, maybe I shouldn't give it away for people
No,
who
yeah, we have to be
haven't.
careful.
Yeah, but it tells you the origin story of a very important event in the Star Wars
Her initial trilogy.
storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I loved coming across that yesterday because I was like, oh, I should talk to Dawn. Well, so we have only a little bit of time. I think everybody here would be really curious. What's next for you? Do you have any big adventures planned or, activities that you're really
Ugh.
excited about? What's next?
Well, what was supposed to be next was to do this work with the State Department on ocean sustainability, and I was supposed to be going out to the Indian Ocean to not for any. There's no submersible diving in my future that I know of,
Hmm.
although it has been a pleasure to work with Sylvia Earle and Liz Taylor and Ian Griffith. Deep Ocean Exploration Research is the company that Sylvia founded with Liz Taylor, and they build submersibles, and they're building two submersibles to serve Tahiti and the French Polynesian islands in league with the Tetiaroa Society. So it's been a pleasure to sort of be on the advisory team for that. And maybe there's a trip to out to see the submersibles in action once they're built. I think they're
That'd
rated,
be excellent.
I think 1,500 meters, so it's really for the shallower areas around those islands.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to maybe get on a submersible dive at some point.
Yeah, now that's the one to get in on because they are designed so that there's a lot of plexiglass.
Right. You can see a
So you
lot.
can see up above you and a huge field of vision as opposed to the limiting factor where we could only really see in
Yeah.
front of us, and we had to look at camera footage in order to see what was on the side of us.
Well, sounds so exciting. I'm sure a lot of our FathomVersers or FathomNauts would love to join you. And maybe we can through some of the data that you all are
Yes,
generating. Well,
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
thank you so much, Dawn, for joining us. And also thank you to the FathomNauts for sharing a lot of your insightful and thoughtful questions. As we said, images from Challenger Deep are now available in FathomVerse. And there's a number of different ways to celebrate this momentous occasion, including, you could earn a limited edition badge or you can share favorites that have a really neat background inspired by the Mariana Trench and the bathymetry there. So check out Dawn's website and book, Mapping the Deep. Follow her on all of her socials. She's on pretty much every network. And so thank you, everybody. And with that, onwards and downwards.
Thank you, Kakani. This was really a delight. And good luck to all of the FathomVerse adventurers out there. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you.